Welcome to the Rudo Love Podcast, a safe haven for Eros, curious souls, and the questioning of what is. On today's episode, I have a very, very special guest for my Ooh interview, where I ask juicy questions to people that move me. Welcome, Caitlin Smith, a being of great resonance.
Oh, I like that. Resonance, yes. Yes.
We are delving into watery, pictorial, sonic depths today. We've already had some preamble swims, so we'll just keep going. It's the new moon, and it's a Pisces watery one, so we're going to have lots of symbolic chats, lots of direct references to the stars and the wisdom held there, but also within our own bodies. We're going to be talking about the truth that is, the knowable of ourselves, and plenty of room for the mystery as well. So welcome, my darling.
Yeah. It's such an honor and such a joy. And may it be the beginning of many. Because, of course, I can't shut up. I was thinking before in relation to depth, that is something that's a fundamental of not only just the openness concept behind singing and songwriting and being, but depth is something that I investigate on many, many different levels. So the depth of breath, one of the things I talk about to keep you busy for the rest of your life would be each inhale is breathed a little deeper down inside, and each exhale becomes a release. And so you can conceptualize that any way you want to, but I sort of like guide people through different iterations of that. Firstly, you could see a little deeper down inside being on the body and the stomach and the pelvis and the legs and the knees, so it's actually moving deeper and lower in the body is where you breathe and where you release. But it's also underneath you. If you're lying down, you could actually go deeper. The next one I take people through is a depth of love.
Yeah.
And so basically I ask people to think of someone who they have, an acquaintance with, and then I want you to breathe in that love for that person and then breathe out to them, whatever that love is. And we're deepening our idea of love and pulling to mind different people or keeping the same person, up to you. But basically that depth. And I was just thinking, because we were talking about the watery depths, I am so happy down there. And that isn't just saying, hey, I'm a strong swimmer. I like talking about deep conceptual psychotherapeutic themes as well.
Yes.
The underworld. But, I've got that Jupiter and Scorpio thing, which was confusing to me because I didn't really understand what Scorpio was about until I realized it's not meant to stay as the scorpion. It's meant to transform into the eagle or the phoenix, which is what it represents. And also what's freaky shit is, oh my gosh, now we're going to get woo-woo on your ass, baby.
Yay.
Which is the entire sort of going counterclockwise as it does the
Zodiac.
astrological chart. You are born Aries, you find nutrition and sustenance, Taurus, and groundedness. You learn to speak and communicate and find information. Gemini, you learn to love and create a home, and that's Cancer. Then you learn to actually stand up and be heard, and there's the play and the joy and the open-heartedness and the loving of self. And then we have to heal whatever damage was done during Leo season. Oh, possibly face first in the cheese dip with a carrot up your ass. And so you've got to actually take some personal responsibility, hello, Virgo, and then you've got to make it so and clean up the mess that the lion left behind.
Wow.
And then we stop with the personal constellations, and you then are able, once you've done all the work, because what I'm saying is you got to move through each preceding one to get to the next, right? Because otherwise you just can't go through. And each year we're given the opportunity to go through the same pattern, to learn, to evolve. So then you can start your relationship, Libra, then you can deepen that relationship, become sexual, Scorpio. Yes. And then you've got all the trauma that brings up, because it brings up a lot of trauma. And then you have Sagittarius, hey, I'm done with my fucking healing process. I'm going to travel the world, adventure, teaching, lots of fun, lots of belief systems to investigate, whatever. What I didn't realize is with the Centaur that is based around what Chiron became as a planet Centaurus, as a star, you've got the bow and arrow, and the arrow is actually pointing straight into the belly of the scorpion. That's something I didn't realize.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know, which is really, really fun, because then after that, after Sagittarius, you come home, and what are you going to do with that PhD? What are you going to do with that knowledge and all that lived experience? You're going to set up governance, you're going to set up institutions, you're going to actually become the real authority on it. And then we join together with our collective, which is Aquarius. And then you've got your collective unconscious and the depths of that. And that's really interesting, because with songwriting, with teaching songwriting, I'm all down in or up in everyone's grill. I'm totally in their hearts to help them express themselves. So that's what I'm helping them do, is like get to the issues that they wish to most express. And very often we don't know what those issues are until we express them.
Oh, yeah.
That's the interesting thing. It's like, from doing the Julia Cameron Artist Way stuff, which I've been doing, like the morning pages, 3 pages of longhand, 22 years.
Yeah, you said that's incredible.
So the thing about that is, I didn't realize the magic that happens between page 2 and 3. That's wild. And I have to really curate it to actually do constructive things
What
with
does that mean? Unpack that.
So there's 3 pages. And most people would kind of get to 1.5 and go, meh, I've got better shit to do with my day. They don't keep going. But if you keep going, the reward is probably the runner's high if you're running.
Yeah.
Is you actually get to, once you've got rid of the preliminary, you've described what the dreams were as you remembered them, you've described perhaps the blessings of the day before, I don't know, whatever, butter's your muffin. Then you've got, your mind clicks into something that is deeper. And you get to the real issues, because what is really funny, that is the most hysterically funny thing. It's like almost running interference with yourself. You don't realize what's really bugging you until you've got through everything and you've kind of cleared away all the trash.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, well, that's the real issue, actually. That's what happened yesterday, and I was actually putting off even remembering it because it was so hurtful, or fuck that, and so that depth, I think it's joyous for me, because I don't see I'm so well acquainted with pain. I'm so well acquainted with suffering that I actually think it's rich, it's fertile.
Yes.
It's basically, well, something will come of that, because that's where my songs are at.
Absolutely.
And I wouldn't be able to write the songs that I write if it was just,
if you weren't allowing yourself
boring.
to feel.
Oh my God, there'd be nothing to write about.
Right.
And particularly one of the ones, Gunslingers and Skeleton Keys. So my first stalker was in 1994, which was the end of a relationship, and he just would not let go. And he was like,
so buzzy that you're saying first.
Yeah, I've had 4. God. And the second one was, a homeless, alcoholic, bipolar, very dangerous person who was on the, North Shore District Court for threatening to kill. Yeah. But, there's other relationships. Mm-hmm. Even within a relationship, I was stalked. So the thing about this is I was working on the song, and I felt like it was actually drawing it, magnetizing more of that situation to me, because it was a poem that was completely unrelated to me. It was actually about the city. And the poem itself is a completely different poem. And I love the poem. But it's not about being stalked or anything. Mm-hmm. It's actually what would happen, like, if the city were anthropomorphized, and actually how does it hide its secrets? And then the cleaners come through at night and find these little, the kinky bits that people are trying to hide. And all of this. And it was a fun poem, Gunslingers and Skeleton Keys. But then I wrote it into a song, but oh my gosh, glacial in terms of writing, because I wasn't going there. And as I said, when I did go there, I felt like it was drawing more negative shit to me. So I didn't want to work on it. It was like, felt too potent and powerful and dangerous. So I went overseas for 3 months of traveling by myself in Europe in 2015. And then I got back and I realized I've got to actually go to the truth of it. I've got to go as deep as it gets. Otherwise, I'm not going to find what's going to happen here. So Gunslingers and Skeleton Keys, I mean, shit, should I play it for you? It's
absolutely.
Yeah? Okay, because that's a big one. Keep out. Inconsolable tonight, the streets won't stop crying. Your concrete guts churned up, in your head a humming, 'cause you won't trust anyone, no. You can't trust anyone. If your guard is down and you fall asleep, they ride roughshod over your dreams. You're closing windows and locking doors, still they wait outside till you come home, hypervigilant too. Vigilantes, shadows and doubts, cowboys and thieves, singing gunslingers and skeleton keys, rattle and stomp, but you can't get into the heart and beat. Gunslingers and skeleton keys, gunslingers and skeleton keys, gunslingers and skeleton keys. Barely alive after the fight, eyes are black, hands are white, a hostage to their jealousy. You swear each time you're gonna leave, but where can you go? There's nowhere to hide. You know if you stay, you probably die singing gunslingers and skeleton keys. Yeah, rattle and stomp, but you can't get into the heart and beat. Gunslingers and skeleton keys, gunslingers and skeleton keys, gunslingers and skeleton keys. As soon as you hit the ground, you run from this one-horse town, triggered by uniforms that can't stand to keep you down, and they're grabbing at butterflies and shoot birds right out of the sky. You were running as the bullets fly. But if it's still and really quiet, you'll open up and welcome love inside. Weapons and defenses down, you are safe to stand on to your worst fears, face to face, and say, gunslingers and skeleton keys, yeah, rattle and stomp, but from now on you can't scare me, no, no. keys, can't keep the peace. Gunslingers and skeleton keys, gunslingers and skeleton keys. Can keep the peace. Gunslingers and skeleton keys, gunslingers and skeleton keys. So she's a biggie. Yes. Oh, that's yours, isn't it? Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
And
a
it's
sneaky biggie because it's got like playfulness and like this kind of digestibility that it's
that's a good thing in a song. Digestibility.
like, it's very accessible.
Ha. That's good. I mean, actually, that's brilliant because actually, I think the inaccessible songs are ones where people aren't authentic. And therefore you're not actually, the person writing it doesn't get it, so you don't get it.
Interesting.
Right? So songwriting is about revealing, not concealing.
Oh my gosh.
And, and that's the reason why when you go there, there's a beautiful expression, never let the reality get in the way of the truth. So, you can use hyperbole and it's better that you do because, songwriters like Kate Bush was not actually inside the belly of the pregnant woman during a nuclear holocaust, that she sang from the perspective of the fetus, But hey, what's the question for me?
Yeah, so I guess to start us off, when we think about what makes you you, what are the sort of foundational elements of Caitlin? How do you see yourself?
Ooh. Well, I see myself as a spirit in a physical body.
Mm-hmm.
And I see myself as being very sensitive. That has been ridiculed my entire life. So from my family just would actually, it's like that fantastic Hannah Gadsby thing, where the where the fart is complaining to the nose saying, "Don't be so sensitive," It's like, awesome. But yeah, I feel sensitive. I feel really, my blindness is who I am. So I feel like that's a really strong part of my identity because I grew up blind. And my mother still doesn't acknowledge that I am blind. She's always saying to me I should try harder.
Wow.
And for her, I don't think she would ever, I never identified or got with the community. And so that's, I think who I am is wanting to be the person who creates community because perhaps I haven't felt like I've belonged to one because they're not cohesed and they're not united. Even though I have actually belonged to some really strong communities, like in terms of social justice, when I worked for Greenpeace in Toronto and here and worked for Forest and Bird and, the social justice movement, we knew exactly who we were marching with every Friday night up Queen Street, shoulder to shoulder, because we were there and we knew exactly who everybody was. And I also sort of was, I worked in the One World Books, which was a left-wing book bookshop on K Road, which also had the trade aid shop, which I had managed, was a volunteer coordinator there for just a small amount of time, but it was a beautiful time in my life in the mid-90s because there was a real community there.
Yeah.
And the musical community, like the poetry community, but in terms of blind, there's no community. And that's because the Blind Foundation actually believe that it's like privileged information and privacy, so they don't share people who could be really helping each other, particularly parents of blind kids, with meeting adults with that condition. Right? They can't speak to that. They over smother or they overprotect or they, God knows what they do. These days, there's so much more support. Back in my day, I grew up blind in mainstream school.
Wow.
So, I didn't go to Homai. I went for a visit and just felt like I so don't belong here. Mainly because I cringe a lot with being the center of attention, which is also my identity is really, in a way, an unfortunate one, being on stage, because I don't want to be the center of attention. I actually want to hide, because the negative attention that blindness gives you, particularly when I used a cane. I'm using a cane now because I want to make the cane sexy again campaign globally.
Nice.
Because so many people are like, no, we want to be blind. Don't think that it's something you should be ever ashamed of. It's like, especially cringe because I'm gaining vision the same way that people lose their vision with age. I'm gaining it. And that is really horrible to me, because I don't want to see people's faces. I prefer not to see detail. I prefer not to see anything that ends up being distracting. So, that has given me a real crisis of identity. But what makes me me, I think it's all about that really intensely spiritual side, what was completely denied me and invalidated and ridiculed by my academic parents.
Right.
And that adult world that they live in, totally shuts children out. My parents' best friends were the Steads, and so the Kay and Carl Stead, and they supported their children hugely. Charlotte Grimshaw and Margaret Stead and Oliver, they were always respected for having their own opinions. And I remember being insanely jealous at a dinner party because I saw the way Carl would support Margaret's beliefs and honoured and agreed with her position. And
so
I was
you saw...
Oh my God, I saw what would have been an alternative, because I've only been criticised and put down. And so I feel that. So that's a hard thing to let go of, despite my age. I think that's the reason why that Saturn square that I was referring to before is kind of like having the finger on the pause, which is referred to in the poem, is this idea that, you've got all this amazing talent, you've got all these things that are working for you, but you don't believe it. So I was asked by my counselor, do you want to be seen? And I said no, but I then had a caveat to that, but I want to be heard.
I knew it. Yeah.
But that's also a really interesting thing about the world we live in, that is totally geared for the visual.
Yeah.
So basically, those things like all the content these days is for the eyeball. People put all this text on screen, but they're not providing a narration. Yes, you've got your audio books. Cha-ching. This is great. It's a move in the right direction. Audible. Yeah. But not so with the content that's provided. Here's a hot tip to all of the people who are making video content.
Yes. Please
don't go to an empty screen and provide the most important information in a written form. And fuck you, subtitles. I love photography and movies because I can actually magnify it with a photo and actually go in and see detail I wouldn't otherwise see. The front row of a movie, when it's 30 foot high, I can see shit that I wouldn't have seen. Like I could go to Paris and I could be in the city, but I won't see it. I won't see that city, but I see a movie of it and I go, oh wow, is that was there? Because I haven't got a clue. And you don't need to, by the way. That's the interesting thing about people thinking they need to see. Why? Why is that so important to you? Why?
Yeah.
Because it already exists. You don't need to see it. That's back to the whole seeing is believing thing, hey?
Yeah.
So,
Aww. Hello for your video.
Oh my God, look at that.
Whoa. What is it?
It's my chart.
Oh, your natal chart.
Yeah, that just happens to be there.
I love it. Well, so we're sat in Caitlin's beautiful salon space with your piano and sat across from each other in this incredible environment. And there is so much more than what meets the eye. There's the feeling, the nourishment. I mean, the first thing that you did when I came in was offer me a beautiful cuppa with all of these nourishing ingredients within it. I can smell this incredible stock flower behind me. There is so much richness in all these other senses, and to be embodied, actually. You speak to this a lot when you talk about the healing components of your singing lessons. That it's much more than just the delivery of song or the honing of the skill.
Yes.
There is a truth and uncovering of who you are and what your being wants to express. And all of that is the component of the here and now. It's not. I totally agree with you that aesthetics only take us so far.
Would you know there was a quote today in the Divine Harmony that sounds like a stripper name, I know, but she is. Where is it? I'm just going to say Divine Harmony Astrology, and see where that takes me, because it was really interesting in terms of the Pisces new moon. Oh, come you. And it had this really, really good quote, which I absolutely adore, because, you know, my great-grandmother was Kate Edgar, who was the first woman in the British Empire to get a BA.
Oh, my gosh.
You know, we wouldn't have the vote here if it wasn't for her, because she was used by the suffragettes to demonstrate that, you know, you don't... if you educate women, and this was in 1873, so this is a long time ago. You know, I mean, she was the first in the British Empire. And even if it was in the States, they were different topics for women than for men. But she was chemistry, mathematics. You know, she was doing the do.
The name. I had no idea.
Yeah, so the Kate Edgar Centre, which is in the Auckland University, the Kate Edgar Commons. So what she did is she was an amazing woman of faith, because her father, the Reverend Samuel Edgar, believed in the education of women, and also Lillian, with the four daughters. Lillian Edgar became the 2IC to Madame Blavatsky with the Theosophy movement, set up a school in India with Krishnamurti, and was really, really involved, would like travel around. That was her little sister.
Wow.
And she Kate was just such an amazing person, set up with her husband, another minister, this Welshman, William Evans, was the Ford movement, which I didn't even realize was still going today. When I went to the States, it was so amazing. I went round the world walking the labyrinths, and when I was recently in Portland, there were 4 that we got to walk. So this is a really interesting Divine Harmony, the new moon in Pisces thing, and I wanted to give you the unseen quote, because it was actually really amazing.
Oh, yes, please.
And the whole thing is great, by the way. And also the werewolf and the squirrel. What the... and all the semi-sextiles. Woo! I
love how there's nuance beyond
nuance. The heart
nuance.
needs to be leading the way in this lunar cycle, and in the Saturn ingress. Saturn, in his essence, is not about heart, compassion, or emotion. He is about boundaries, grounding, stability, and containment. At his best, Saturn in Pisces is about creating solid containers for love and emotion. But shadow Saturn in Pisces would be about blocked emotion, closing the heart. We have a choice in how we choose to move into the cycle. So I'm just going to find it, because it's, we defer to Saturn, higher heart, crown, Saturn, Neptune is dreams, Saturn is what is. It's duality there. Ultimately, the journey is bringing them into union so they can inform and relate to each other instead of polarize. Can we ground our dreams into reality? Can we see both what is possible and also what is real at the same time? Can we be in our hearts and spirits while still being grounded and in the body? God damn it, it's quite a long post. You know what? Maybe it wasn't even that one.
Well, I quite like that. I like the firm containment that you can have this the duality.
Yeah. Work with it. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do with my Saturn square. So in other words, I'm trying to work with Saturn. I'm actually, what I find really fascinating, Kronos, Saturn. So Kronos was Chiron's father. And so time allows you to mature and find mastery. But also what is wonderful is it allows you to look back. Whereas if you didn't have time, you wouldn't have a way of going, what was I doing last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago? And therefore you wouldn't have that stock-taking element of thinking, well, how am I doing here? What have I done? What do I still need to do? I can't remember where it was, but it was in relation to, what is most important are those things that we cannot see. And I can't remember where I saw the quote. But it was a good one. Damn it. I thought it wasn't there, but it's not.
No, you said it.
Sorry.
You were talking about the blind community or the lack thereof. What other types of communities do you find yourself in or that have nourished you?
That's interesting because I wouldn't necessarily know them as communities as opposed to sort of individual friendships. Because I think, if I were the kind of person who was going to like spirit festivals or resolution festivals and feeling that those people were part of my tribe, there is a lot of spiritual tourism out there.
Yeah.
And for me, spirit is entirely my own business. God is love, love is God. So when people actually say they don't believe in God, they're basically saying they don't believe in love. And it's really sad.
Interesting.
Because that is like, they've obviously got some negative associations and connotations around
the word
concept
God,
of God.
certainly has been bandied about.
That's because it's been colonized by organized religion, which is absolute arse. Basically, we are spiritual beings. If you actually kind of work with that, then your life is 1,000 times better. And I affiliate probably strongest with Taoism.
Yes.
Because you're working with something rather than against it. As you said, going with the flow.
Yeah.
And you will be given so much evidence as to wrong path, that's not the right path for you. And then you will given like the frictionless flow of a hydroslide if you're going with something that is right for you. And so what was the question? Oh,
well, I like that you were...
community.
Yeah.
Because I felt like...
So it's more about the interpersonal, like it's almost one-on-one, would you say?
I'd say it would be... No, it's actually almost about the entirely personal. But if you find other people, like I don't need a congregation is what I'm saying. So I don't need people to chant with me or do anything like that. Some people do. And God bless. That's fantastic if that's your bag. I think there's a beautiful thing that comes from the communion of singing together. Like that's why I love harmonizing so much, But at the same time, I'm going to be harmonizing with the music that I'm making. So it's still me being a self-sourcing pudding. I don't necessarily need those other aspects to it. And that makes me sound like a real lone wolf. And I really don't want to be. But what I'm aware of is, to find people who don't ridicule my spirituality has been quite a hard journey because of the academic just absolute evisceration of what's weird is, my parents would say they are art appreciators and lovers, and they had all sorts of amazing art around the house and music around the house when I was growing up. But at the same time, they are not creating themselves, as Julia Cameron would call blocked creatives, and they're the most hostile of all because they're actually angry at those people who are expressing themselves. They will put it down because they can't face it in themselves. So they will insult it and they will denigrate it. And they will say, this is the canon. There's no reason why you should add to it because it's already been created. And it's like, wow, you seriously are not a creative then, because it's not for other people's benefit. You talked about what nourishes an audience and what nourishes me. Well, the music and the creation, the creative process nourishes me. If people get that too, and they will because it's authentic and real.
Yes.
But it's not my responsibility how they receive it.
Oh, wow.
At all. And if I were, that would be pandering to someone and it wouldn't be authentic. And
right.
Oh my gosh, talk about articulate. David Bowie is so articulate about that, because he really was a genuine artist.
Oh, I haven't watched the new documentary.
Oh, it's great. New Age Daydream. Oh, it's so good. And, numerologically speaking, he's a 303, which is very interesting. Anyway.
Why is that?
Just because it's really heartfelt emotional expression as opposed to just, as you said, aesthetic expression of something artistic and beautiful. There was a podcast, I think, an interview with the director of the film, and Tony Visconti was taking him through all the footage, this huge, years of footage in the vault.
Oh.
And he was going through one and he isolated the vocal track, and it was actually him weeping between I just want to live, singing the line I just want to live, I just want to live, and weeping because his brother was in the RAF and had PTSD, but actually developed schizophrenia from it and actually was institutionalized. And he didn't want to wind up institutionalized like his brother. So he worked with the demons. He worked with the disquiet in his mind and made it into art. Particularly painting, which is so beautiful. Like his painting is gorgeous, and Joni Mitchell's painting is just amazing. I mean, I personally don't paint because it's got the aspects of color that I can't be friendly with because I don't see color.
You don't see color?
No, just in a chromatope.
Okay, yep.
Yeah. But I also don't know what the fuss is about because it's like, well, meh. If you've never had it, you don't miss it.
True.
Which is also true of the reason why I really want to be speaking to people who've recently acquired blindness, the gift of blindness, because they will be losing something, but I never lost anything. So I can really help them go, well, you don't need it anyway. I know you think you need it. I know you think you're losing the most important thing in your life. And I've been brought up around so many artists who would go, I would rather die than be blind. I mean, think of the premise for Dancer in the Dark, which is that Lars von Trier film with Björk.
Yeah.
And she's dropping her glasses in the last frame, you know, being executed. In other words, saying, I would rather die than be blind.
Yeah.
Fuck off.
I know. I had a very similar experience in art school where I started to develop a topical dermatitis. And so the material that I was working with was causing destruction to my skin.
Yeah.
And so I had that experience of not being able to use the tools that
were most natural to you.
Yeah. And the thing that, you know, I was like trying to basically like earn the grade, participate, graduate art school. And there was that kind of like fork in the road of like, well, what do you do if you don't have your hands, if you're an artist?
Concept, honey.
And, you know, you just have really good teachers who are there to go, hey, like, please don't become an apparition of yourself. I remember one of my teachers said that you're like an apparition. Come back. Just use your mind. Write in your journal. Keep the ideas going. You can still be here.
Yeah.
And
was that Joyce? Who was it?
Oh no, it was back in New York.
Oh, I see. Oh my God.
Yeah. But see, there's always those teachers.
Yeah.
Wherever you are.
One of the joys is, you know, of my generation is like we have become the teachers, you know, and I mean, not to say that anyone can't become a teacher, but, you know, it is, like I was saying before, it is interesting that we can support each other so well.
Oh,
because that's the thing that happens, you know, artists are so supportive of artists. There's nothing more beautiful than the tiny little bespoke communities that can happen from things like, for example, and one of my favorite songwriters is Guy Clark. And he and his wife, Susanna, who is a painter and songwriter and unfortunately alcoholic, would sit around with all the other songwriters of that time. What is it? Townes Van Zandt and Steve Earle and the names will come to me. And basically they'd sit around reading poetry to each other and helping each other write their songs.
Beautiful.
You know, and that's one of the things that I feel so privileged to be part of is that, you know, because this particular lounge on this particular rug, which is a Shiraz, that's the name of it, has been the place where a lot of people have found sanctuary. And particularly those students who I've helped write songs, some for the very first time.
Yeah.
Because my thing is about helping people write, you know, and I really am passionate about that because when I started, you know, as a jazz singer, I was always singing the standards and they're great and they're amazing. But I wanted to actually say the stuff that they weren't saying. So it just gets to a point where if you're used to the fluency of having a medium like poetry where you know you can express to a certain extent and go, I can drop the mic now.
Yes.
You know, and feel like that's a wrap, you know.
Yes.
I'm happy with what came out then. Because the revelation is also the reward in itself as well. So when you talk about what nourishes
Less so
me,
much the product as the process. You
damn
mean?
straight.
Yeah.
Well, it is a product of it because revelation is the product of the process. But that's not necessarily, it's shared. Obviously, it's a gift that's shared because you're receiving the revelation and then you're sharing that revelation.
Yes.
Like the song, The Long Game, came out with the same conclusion of one of my poems, which was called Afraid of Angels. And the Afraid of Angels poem sort of has a twist in its tail, and most of my poems do, of stuff that I had no clue about, which was actually the person who's a seraphim hunter. He's basically a person who keeps killing angels because they remind him of what he most detests in himself, like the feathered, the unprotected, the feminine, So I really love the poem. I love the poem. But it actually came out with this amazing conclusion that we are angels, that, look in the mirror and realize that you are an angel too. So you're killing yourself, and that was something that was then developed into the song later on. But it all feeds itself. And I love the little tastes of community that we can have. Like, we had a house concert at Julie Mason's place the other day, and it reminded me of what would happen when I was a drinker, and that was my community, was the drinkers going to the pubs, because I'd be at the the London bar every weekend watching the jazz there.
Yeah.
And then became one of the people who performed jazz there. But, it had closed and changed by the time I made it there. And, I would just look up to all these jazzers who were like Frank Gibson Jr. and Tony Hopkins and people like that, who really was so supportive of me when I was definitely not supportive of myself at all. And the language of jazz is something I'm really fluent in. But I remember Azure McCall, this amazing jazz singer from she's based in Hawaii, and
Azure
McCall, yeah.
Oh.
And my friend who was the drummer, who was playing with her, sort of literally dragged me by the wrist to meet her and said, "This is Caitlin. She wants to be a jazz singer, but she's really shy." And I was just sitting there shaking, and she said, "No, honey, you can't be shy if you're going to do this." Basically implying that you have snot all over your face. And that's true. I remember actually being at an outdoor festival with my band, and, we were redefining the genre, honestly. I am such a engaged, passionate performer. Like, there's nothing that I leave out.
Truth.
Everything is going to be in there, what I'm giving. Physically, emotionally, everything is in it.
Yeah.
And I think, well, bar a couple of substances, I had everything that could be excreted on my face. And I turned around, and honestly, there was snot, sweat, tears, saliva.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like going, God, how do you do that? I mean, Elvis, I needed my little white towel. But anyway, how did I get onto that with community? I think it's just what Azure McCall was saying, in terms of it's very often misunderstood that performers, songwriters are also shy.
Yeah.
Because we're really misrepresented as being, oh, you want to be up on that stage. You love it. It's like, no, I would sooner eat my own entrails. That's the reason I melted down on tour and had a month-long panic attack, is because I'm comfortable singing and playing, but I don't want to be the center of attention because of all my blindness. So if I can just pretend, and this is what I said to audiences when I was touring around, this is just my front room. You guys, welcome to my front room. This is
nice.
This is my lounge. Here we are.
Nice.
I'm at home here because
I appreciate that. I mean, a lot of what you speak to is around bringing forward some stories or narratives that need to be shared.
Yeah.
What do you think is specific or special to, or unique to, shall we say, Aotearoa? Like, what is it that is here?
Yeah, okay. So we have some things that are actually kind of counterproductive. There's the tall poppy syndrome, as we all know, which is so alien to the States. They just don't have a concept of that.
Yeah.
They are very...
And for people who don't know, tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah, it's the bringing down the highest, the tallest poppies will be decapitated because they are seen as a threat.
That's
and
horrific.
Also it ties in... It is. It ties in with the island mentality of there only being room at the top for one person or two people and very limited resources. And so there's not enough to share. And it's really an experience of lack rather than abundance. So, the whole thing is, no, you can shine. This little light of mine, I'm going to make it shine. But unfortunately, that's not what we're told. So we're told to dumb and dull and hide. And so those stories, which are the most important stories, because, I think the dominant elite, white, male, moneyed elite has actually had the microphone, able-bodied, too long.
Yep.
And we actually need to give a voice to those voices that have been silenced and are not heard. And that's a really sensitive issue for a lot of people who actually are unaware of their privilege. I mean, that's the hardest thing. Is
a lot of unpacking.
Well, they're just really uncomfortable with the fact that, oh, you mean I can't be heard? And it's like, it's not a question that you can't be heard. It's just giving someone else a go.
Yeah.
You know, and for in New Zealand, I think it allows us, due to just the smaller scale, the capacity to have an incubator to do your thing.
Yes.
Like, for example, when I went to the States and sort of sang with these amazing Grammy Award-winning jazz musicians, and just wow, they immediately just accepted me because I was seen as being New Zealand's greatest, and so they just took that as read. So it's like, oh, I'm the greatest in a country. It may be a country of 5 million, but, you know, whatever. I mean, and even to say I'm the greatest in this country is absolute arse. But, you know, it's like, I've definitely done my miles. And I think that's the other thing about being in New Zealand is we're less likely to make a livelihood out of art and being a performer. Because in the States, like the people I know, like Vanessa McGowan and Cy Winstanley, Tattletale Saints, they've gone over to live in Nashville and have full-time touring, full-time musician jobs. Whereas most of the musicians I know would at least be teaching. And I teach as well, obviously. And I've put more energy and time and thought and existence into teaching than I have my own career. For sure. Wow. And that's the whole putting other people forward before myself and sort of waving goodbye with the ticker tape as the ship sails going, oh, there's another one, you know, because I've even been told by someone maybe cursing me by saying you're too much of a fan to be your own star and artist. Because I do fangirl on people. I love being in an audience and like, just losing myself and being.
I have seen you. You are usually the only person dancing.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah. And I am the audience. Like I actually have artists come up to me who will actually thank me for being there. Yeah. You know, and I think that comes from my sight condition as well, because I can't see all of the other people. Maybe not engaging. I can't see other people's responses, so I'm not in any way affected by that or influenced by that. Yes. Now, that's an interesting thing as well about magnificent performers like Aldous Harding, you know, because I found it so hard to keep my arm up with my miniscope to keep focused on her, because she was working in a very almost 100% visual way. She was keeping all of the band under the thumb of no facial expression whatsoever.
Whoa.
And she herself would kind of stay in character, but not allow the face to be expressive other than the contortions that were not contrived, but what she was deliberately putting out. So it's more of a kabuki. It's a very theatrical thing. And I'm not disrespecting it. It's just totally different. I always remember thinking when I left that concert, there's 100% different from me. You know, in terms of usually I'm kind of wetting myself with excitement and I cannot contain myself, and so's the band, because it's such an improvised thing. It's not under the thumb. It's not controlled. It is complete loss of control, which I'm very happy with.
Nice.
You know, because that is improvisation, and you don't know what's going to happen, but that's great, because do you really need to know what's going to happen? I am so the opposite of your archetypal Virgo. Not even. Absolutely. There's nothing clean about this house.
I mean, you are this incredibly prolific being. You know, you're constantly writing, you're constantly performing. Where is what is the thing that feeds and nourishes so that is a sort of replenishing act? What recharges you? What nourishes you?
Well, that would be a spiritual thing, because that's drawing from the deeper well. That's it. I mean, like, the deeper well is there. It's constant. I mean, I love this really beautiful First Nation concept of our stream of consciousness needs to be kept pure, because otherwise it will flow into the collective stream of consciousness, and then that's going to pollute it. So, you know, we have to keep our streams clean. And I think what I do keeps my stream clean. I think what ends up happening is that's always challenged every step of the way, mainly by my relationships, by my family life and by my relationships. It's constantly sort of challenging me, and it's almost like the grit that creates the pearl. You know, it creates a lot of what I'm putting out creatively, but it's also really, really nothing can be taken for granted because it's not easy sailing. It's not an easy situation. So I'm constantly trying to understand. And I think with that support, I mean, I really, really feel it. Like, the reason why it's called the long game is because I absolutely feel there's ancestral support and there's angelic support or spiritual support or whatever you're going to call it, you know, love. But I honestly feel like I ask for it when I walk the labyrinth, and I stand in the middle of the labyrinth and I'm actually facing all the different directions, asking for the angels and ancestors to help guide me into the situations which will teach me the most, where I can be most loved and where I can give the most love, because they've got unfinished business. But I have to be very specific on that, because I've asked to be put in those situations where I can help the most, and I've been put in really dangerous situations before.
Good to know.
So I have to, now I learned that lesson, phew, okay, so I don't want the police to get involved or oranga tamariki. We want to actually just keep this on the stuff that's going to be most light, fluffy, joyous, and beneficial to all. You know.
Speak to the labyrinth.
Oh!
What is this labyrinth you speak of?
Okay. Well, I mean, I could even show you my my CD has...
I have it.
Oh, true.
I didn't bring it, but...
I'll give you the copper feel. So on the front cover of the CD is Braille, and it's a picture of me looking into the centre of the labyrinth, which is outside St Mary's Church in Parnell. And inside is a tactile labyrinth of the Chartres Cathedral medieval design. And the one that's the in outside Holy Trinity is a classic labyrinth, which is like the brain. So the cross in the middle is the brain stem. And so you could actually, I haven't mapped out where each part of the brain controlling whatever would be, but that's the brain stem. Right. So that's what it is. But every single labyrinth, I went to this amazing
And this
place.
was a really intense production.
Yeah.
I mean,
13 years.
The pain that you, but the dedication and the persistence, the dogged determination to get this out the way you wanted it to be delivered.
Yeah.
I literally mean the package.
Yeah, exactly. Because there was an evil print broker, and there were all sorts of like behind the scenes nastiness going on. And it totally blew out of budget, and that's the reason why Bob's there to project manage this thing and basically say, nah, we're going to keep this double album because we want to keep the tactile elements. We're going to keep the labyrinth theme going.
It's so beautiful.
And there's an inner ear labyrinth, you know, and that's what's in the liner notes as well, as explaining the kaupapa behind what it is to be centered, what it is to be on a journey, but to know you're on the right path. There is no wrong path. That's the difference between a maze and a labyrinth. So the labyrinth only has... Did you not know that there's a liner notes explaining all this? I hope you did, because it's in the CD.
I just love that the way you said it landed so beautifully.
Okay, so here is the explanation with the picture of the... I'm just unfolding the liner notes here. So it's got the lyrics of the song with the photos of where I recorded my footsteps pertaining to the song. Mm-hmm. So there's also a picture of an anatomical sketch of the inner ear labyrinth. To say, you know, that's how we find balance, and that's when you're standing in the center, or even when you're walking around, you're realizing that this is okay. You're on the right path. You can't be on the wrong path because it's only one path. So you go in and you go out, and what is really interesting about it is walking it with other people, because that's kind of like the whole Buddhist catch bullet for, you know. You are walking on the path with others, and the 10th stages of Zen. That's right. And you know, when you're walking the path with others, you're not in anyone's way. We've got different paces, but it's still the same path. And that's the reason why I love the fact that we can help each other. But you know what? I went to this amazing place in the Netherlands, which is called Angel Place, and this guy's made his life's work to build all these different labyrinths, like miles and miles and miles of labyrinths, from the Celtic design, which is the 3 spirals. It's a beautiful one. The Chinese, the Egyptian, the Nordic ones that are so old they can't be dated. I mean, it's just the Hopi one. There's a lovely one up here. Actually. It's a Hopi labyrinth. So that one's got your guy in the middle.
Oh, that's and that kind of feels like a radiating sun to me. This one.
Yep. It's a lovely one. And when you walk them, you can look at them fine, or you can trace them with your fingers, but when you're actually walking them, it's a totally different story.
Yeah, you're in it.
Yeah. I love it. And I mean, there are a lot of people, there's this coolest thing called the Labyrinth Locator, which basically will find you one wherever you are in the world. And when I was traveling, like I said, when I was traveling around New Zealand in the tour in 2021, when I had my month-long panic attack, Nelson Cathedral, where Kate Edgar, my great-grandmother, set up Nelson School for Girls. In Nelson Cathedral, there is a beautiful labyrinth, a classic design labyrinth, which I walked, and it was so necessary. There's my friend's place, Sol, who's in Mana Retreat. There's the lovely Chartres medieval labyrinth there. Wherever there was a labyrinth, I found one. And it was really, really great, because that is kind of like, it's plugging into the mains for me. That was something that kept me going throughout the lockdowns, was I could crow fly, walk through the domain for 20 minutes and get to the labyrinth and then walk back. And we all needed to do that. And there's one in St. Columba's Church, but it needs to be painted.
I want to make one.
Sitting there. Yeah. That was one of my dreams, was at the launch of the CD to kind of like actually set one of you get a lot of people who have, for festivals and stuff, they actually have like a tarpaulin kind of labyrinth that you can just fold out or roll out. It's better kind of to have permanent ones. Agreed. Because like this one, obviously I walk barefoot and it's so much fun because it's grass.
Yeah.
And that's lovely because you're just checking into the mains. And that's when I go around, kind of the same way. I'm going to make me sound like a complete wanker because I'm not Rumi, but when Rumi discovered that swinging around a pole was the thing that really made things click for him, and that became the whirling dervishes. Walking the labyrinth gives me all sorts of really, really interesting intel in terms of I'll be working through the chakra system. And what is crazy is I often talk about, each time I go through, I'll say, and starting the prayer wheels flying and the prayer wheels spinning and the prayer flags flying. A friend of mine showed me through the church, and it happened to be Sir Edmund Hillary's, the standard that was given to him, and a quilted thing made for him for his knighthood was from Nepal, I guess, where they had all these prayer wheels on it. And I went, oh, damn, I've just been doing this right outside. This is so cool. This is great. And just going through each time, realizing there'll be more revelations for me. Like, for example, intimacy, when you're seeing into the self, you're seeing into everyone. Because you could argue there's only one intimacy, because there's only one of us here. We've got separate bodies. But therefore, if you can see into yourself, you can see into the other. And vice versa, if you're doing a good job in self-analysis.
That is tricky. That is an interesting one. Because I feel very familiar with the act of intimacy, as in knowing myself, but knowing the other feels like a trickier component of that.
Well, we're the same. We actually have the same misgivings, fears, insecurities, and all the rest of it. It's just we've got different histories. So we process things differently. We've got neurodiversity. We've got all the other things that are going on, but that doesn't mean that we're not the same substance, because we're all made of the same substance. We just have different bodies. So, I
think I've been socialized American, so like the idea of being so individual is like hardwired.
Yes. Isn't that interesting? Because actually that's something that is being asked of us specifically with the Pisces new moon, is like, because it's duality to do with Pisces, one fish swimming one direction, one swimming in the other, it's asking us to look at what is harmful and hurtful in individuation, in individualism, I should say, as opposed to actually honoring that the group has so much power, and we do have to honor the group. We do have to look after the group. That was the fascinating thing about what was going on with such division with the anti-vax stuff was happening.
Yeah.
Because, it's an immense...
Stop being about collective.
Yeah, it's an immense act of care to say, I want to protect the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
It might not be me that's most at stake, but I want to look after my grandparents. I want to look after, and that's true of anything. But wow, we've become so atomized.
Yeah.
And that is not helping anybody, because we do need each other. And that interdependence is something that blind and disabled people are very, very, very aware of, because it's such a clawing and gnawing issue for us, is our dependence. And we don't want to be a burden. And we don't want to, be in the way, and we don't want to be heavily weighing on anyone, and we want to be able to be self-determined. And that is such a pain to so many of us, because, I had a scary thing happen to me where it was just a rogue taxi driver who wouldn't take my total mobility card and charge me full fare, where it's usually, it's now 75% subsidized for taxi travel. And wow, I thought something was wrong with my card, and I was distraught, because that's my freedom, to go and visit friends and stuff, because catching public transport is so anxiety provoking.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, you had other questions?
No, I feel, they're incredibly holistic answers. So I think I'll sort of cap off or round out.
What's going on here?
You're fine. You're fine. It's delicious.
No. So I did my Virgo prep for today, and I actually answered your questions.
You did.
Sent you the email attachment of me answering those questions, and
flip to the back, and you'll see this last question that I have for you.
yes.
I actually have some surprise questions that I kind of want to be impromptu, off the cuff. Okay. But that one around, what is it that you want for the world?
That everyone heal their freaking trauma and get real instead of numbing and denying. Give everyone access to the means of their vocal and creative production. Accessibility. And I think I said on what is my message? Love, sweet love. Yeah. What the world needs now is love, sweet love, for sure. Just in honor of Burt Bacharach. Yeah, I do want to demystify many processes. I want to demystify voice use or vocal production. I want to demystify the songwriting process and the process of creativity. I want to demystify what it is to be blind. But I also want to demystify all of the spiritual aspect, because people are just so phobic of it. They're actually frightened. And that's the interesting thing about a musician or a creative person. We fucking work with that shit. We are every day tapping into the source, into the mains. SOURCE as opposed to SAUCE, but could be the same thing. Anyway, so saucy. Definitely, I would say I feel there's personally a crusade for me to allow people to get more in touch with their love. I mean, that's what one of the songs from You Have Reached Your Destination is, Prayer for a Miracle. And that was me writing a song and multitasking, because I was in the shower, I was warming up, I was praying, and I was also writing a song. So, dear God, I pray for a miracle today, that I may be as loving as I can. May I realize the joy that's in your eyes, and live in every moment without question. And that becomes different, as I sing it. I sort of skip a few words out, may I realize the joy and live in every moment. So I'm not necessarily sort of finishing the rest of those phrases. But you know what? It's really interesting, because that song carries me. And that's what's actually going on with one of the questions that you asked at the beginning was about what do you see about yourself that makes you you? And I see myself as being a space holder. There was something about here, it's what music does to me, I think. Yeah, maybe it was something else. I've been doing so many interviews recently, it could have been something else entirely.
Yeah, let's talk about what's going on for you. Like, what are the things that you're up to these days?
Well, I just put in my Creative New Zealand application, and I had the magnificent Margot Wong help me. Like, she was bottom wiping me through the whole process, which was so generous. Because to be honest with you, I can't access the portal. It's all on spreadsheets. I can't do Excel. It's just, it's even for sighted and sort of other people, it's hella hard because you've actually got one day. And they had a record-breaking amount of submissions all come in to reach their 250 submissions within 24 hours. Wow. And you're constantly looking at the portal, seeing how many people have completed their submissions, and you're still doing yours. Oh, Jesus, no. I mean, that's just too anxiety-provoking. Wow. But God bless, that I was actually allowed an extension, which I felt incredibly guilty about because I thought, oh no, I don't want the special treatment because that makes me feel like I'm less of a functional human, you know? And so I felt really bad about that. And I thought, but what about all my dyslexic friends and everyone else? And I thought that wasn't fair, but they are rejigging the situation. God bless. They're actually changing the whole thing so it's more accessible. Yes. Yay. Okay, so it will happen. But also the magnificent Costa Botes is actually... it's not botes, it's boats, isn't it?
No.
It is botes.
It's botes.
A botes? Oh, good God, I've only just found out how to say your name. Okay, we've actually got, while we're doing this podcast, we've got his camera focused on me the whole time. Meow! And he has been, not ghosting me in a really creepy way, but he's doing a feature-length film, a documentary about me.
Amazing.
Which is kind of freaky. And I have been through all of the self-doubt saying, I'm not interesting, and apparently he's going to make me look really interesting. And when he came to the gig, you and your wife came to the Hokitika gig, and said, oh, you know, she's putting out, this would be interesting. You know, a lot of people, like Lynn Lorcan has a song, You Should Be a Star in Las Vegas, but instead I'm sleeping in Grey Lynn. They say you should be a star in Las Vegas.
Oh my God.
And it's so true, because in fact, all of that song that was written in the 80s still rings true. This is the lyric, for $100 lousy bucks, gee, it was a bummer. And still is. Still is. That's actually what they pay. Like when I was gigging in the States.
Oh my God.
They pay $100 each.
Jesus.
Yeah. But actually, that was for one set, you know, at the jazz club. But in New Zealand, it's like 3 sets. We have 3-hour gigs, you know. And yeah, I mean, I think what would be really lovely about what's happening right now is a representation, because I actually do believe that more blind need to be on screen for sure, because we ain't got none. None. Okay. And also this idea that the idiom of film itself is a visual medium as opposed to audio visual. It is so audio visual, and that's the reason why, as I said before, I love going to particularly documentaries, because I can see the world as it is, which I wouldn't actually get access to. But you know, I think sighted people do actually not have a conception or a realization of how powerful the intimate hearing sense is. It gives you everything. It gives you where you are. It gives you people's breathing. It gives you if they're making sound, it will indicate their body tension that you wouldn't know about if you were just looking at them. You wouldn't know how much body tension someone was holding if you were just looking at them. You wouldn't know what they're feeling. You wouldn't know their emotions. But communication is only 7% the words. It's 55% body language, which is then heard. So that's why I'm saying the body language is heard. It's not just something that's seen, because that's how it affects the voice and the intonation of the voice.
Yes.
So, you know, I know people were going to say body language, but that's looking at someone. No, it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are incredibly well versed at suppressing and going poker face. And how are you going to get your body language from that?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what's going on. And also Then later in the year, if I get the funding, I'll be recording a double album of the 20 songs that I've written since You Have Reached Your Destination was recorded in 2009, which still isn't prolific. But you know what? I'm really looking forward to also getting a online course for singing to come out for those people who don't feel comfortable or can't access one-on-one singing lessons, because I love teaching remotely. It's an absolute joy. And I just love teaching because it jizzes me up so much. Like I feel more identified as a teacher. I will even say to people, I teach better than I sing, because I really, really
That's saying something.
I've had to get so under the hood of the mechanics of my voice because of so much voice loss. And just absolutely knowing how it works. I have to go in there and do very, very pit stop quick repairs as well, you know, for my own performance and for students that are like, you know, invariably they'll, you know, come. There was one student who's from a very, very notable band, and he hadn't had what he considered botched surgery on his voice.
Oh.
And he hadn't sung in 10 months, but he had a gig in like a week's time. And that's when he comes for a lesson. It's like, dude, I met you at a party and offered my services a month ago. You know what I'm saying? It's those things I know where I can be of most benefit to others. And I am, as I said, evangelical about it. But follow the fold, tambourines, yes! Salvation Army styles. That's me.
So I'm just riffing off of what you just said because you mentioned he. So when I think about you teaching, I think about the significant aspects of what women's bodies go through. You know, you've spoken at length to what the kind of menopausal experience was for you and how that affected your voice. So it's not just about women's bodies. You approach it from an all gender.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. I mean, like, you know, I actually think we should approach everything in a gender neutral way.
Nice.
Because, you know, it's not just women going through menopause, it's men going through andropause. And that is really, really misunderstood because we can tell so much by, in fact, one of my voice students who transitioned female to male was able to give me incredible insight as to how the testosterone was the only thing that gave them self-confidence. Wow. They'd never felt self-confidence before because we as women do not have the amount of testosterone that's in body within male bodies. But, you know, naturally, but the thing is, a lot of people who through illness or aging or transition will actually be men who are then having to deal with the lessening testosterone, but maybe even more female hormones, are finding the emotional tumult really hard to navigate, you know, and that's an interesting thing. I think we all need to deal with all of that because,
agreed,
you know, in singing, one of the things I've written about is exactly how the change affects your voice, with specifically speaking to menopause. But also one of the ones is about emotional overload, when you feel as if you'll be drowned in your emotions and you have to somehow manage them and get stability and surf your emotions and swim around in it and get control. So that's something that I also really, really speak to. I think I think we have big problems when we become too gender focused and gender biased. I mean, absolutely, with navigating the break in the voice, that shit's going to happen when in male puberty and in female puberty as well. So it might be just at specific times for women, but it will speak to everyone at different stages of their lives. So that's when you're actually trying to smooth over the break in your voice.
Yeah.
You know, which is really pronounced when you're an early teenager. But you've got to work with that stuff and, you know, and get real about it as well. I mean, the blend of the registers is a really interesting, also part of, obviously, of what I teach is so vast. I mean, the voice is so vast.
The blend of the register.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I don't know what you mean.
Okay, so your voice breaks often, and for women it's a C sharp, for men it's an F sharp, invariably. And it means that when you sing higher than that note, your voice will be just like breathy and high. It's called head voice, as opposed to being what might be called belt quality or legit voice. And in musical theatre, therefore, they do not write for the female voice over a C sharp because you know that it's really safe. But what's really cool about it is you can work, there's an urgency if you're singing heart on the run, keeps a hand on the gun, can't trust anyone. I was so sure what I needed was more. I could shoot out the sun. The days that we raged, we flew off the page and such damage was done. But I made it through because somebody knew that I was meant for someone. Here's what I was going to demonstrate. And so, boy, you leave your boots by the bed when you're leaving this room until someone needs medical help or the magnolias bloom. It's cold in this house that I ain't going out to chop wood, no. Cover me up, know you're enough to use me for good. Going into the chorus where you're on the C,
yes,
which is as far as you're going to comfortably get it out there. And it's just like so many people use it in a really affected way. You know, it's disingenuous. It's just, you know, of course your voice is going to get louder the higher you sing, okay, because the frequencies are going to project more, right? That's the reason why when I was singing low, it's very quiet. But, you know, but there's just so much joy of realizing, woo, I've actually got a birthright of 4 octaves in the female voice. And that's true. All female voices have 4 octaves within the capacity of that centimeter of vibrating ligament. And so all we need to do is massage the edges of singing higher and lower. And for my lowest stuff, what I've realized from post-menopause is that I can sing lower than I ever thought. So I'm definitely a octave and a half, 3.5 octaves, probably more like 3 3/4 octaves. And that's more than you need, really. It is overkill. But it's so much fun to sing stupid high, you know, because... You know, there are certain songs of mine where I actually just play with how high I can sing. And, you know, that's just not something to be afraid of. But I think a lot of people end up with a broken voice and a non-blended registers because they think, well, there's no way that they can access that voice higher than the breaking point in the voice. And it's weird because one of my students who was 11 at the time, I don't know why, but she broke this black key off the piano, was holding it up. It's like, how the hell do you do that? I was actually teaching her and playing the piano at the same time. How do you actually do that? But I sellotaped it back, but it's so funny because it's so representative and metaphorical.
Wow.
Because that is the breaking point of the female voice.
Oh.
Anyway, so there's that.
Oh, that's amazing.
But I'll just give you singing lessons anyway so you can find out what's going on.
Oh, watch the space, people.
Okay.
or be open to the space because it's not about watching.
Yeah, listen to this space. Yes. Keep your ears open.
Oh, Caitlin. Oh, we've gone so many places in this one. Was there anything that you wanted to cover that we haven't covered?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, we're good. I mean, there was actually a lot of those questions that were really... 3 moments in your life that have musically defined you.
Oh, yes. Let's do that one.
Yes.
I super love that question. What were 3 moments in your life that have musically defined you?
Well, you know, one was very recent. In fact, some of them are quite recent, was when I was in Portland singing to an audience of people who'd come to see me with Grammy Award-winning, amazing musicians that would just put the band together and we'd only had like an hour rehearsal.
Wow.
And I realized that I was fluent in the language of jazz. I was a native speaker of jazz, even though I don't identify as that. I identify myself as a song poet, story singer, so I'm more into the sort of singer-songwriter thing. I write songs, everyone, not I'm singing the jazz standards and I'm scatting. So then I realized I'm more feral, and I even shared that with the audience, self-defining. I said, you've heard of feral cats. I do feral scat, that is, and made everyone actually sort of, it opened them up a lot, which I felt less judged. Because, I mean, the drummer is like Kurt Elling's ex-freaking drummer. Oh, my God. Whatever. And so it was really, really a beautiful defining moment for me to be on that stage and to feel legitimate. Because, the thing is I didn't go through jazz school. I'm from a punk background, and I don't feel, therefore, as if I am legit. And I'm always the kind of behind-the-scenes, unseen person. And so that was a defining moment. Another defining moment for me was actually in 2000 when I was a soloist with the APO, at the Auckland Philharmonic Orchestra, singing the songs of Mavis Rivers, who was an amazing Samoan jazz singer. And I was standing backstage, and I'd rehearsed as much as I could, and I just had this microphone that I realized no alcohol could save me, no more preparation could save me, no more nothing could save me. I just was that person about to do this gig to the best of my abilities. And as soon as I brought the microphone to my lips and started singing, everything was fine. But that's the crazy thing about living with an addictive personality that I have, is it's so much easier to take the edge off with drugs and alcohol, which is the reason why I have so much space that I hold for my community. For anyone in particular who wants to give up, I will support them through it, because I'm 14 years clean and sober, which is also, that Jason Isbell little sample of a song that I had there. I sobered up and I swore off that stuff forever this time. Amazing, amazing person who speaks to that. That is a community. And the recovery community can offer a lot of sort of a template for setting up peer support for songwriters, which is also what I really, really want to do. That's another of my big dreams. I've got so many big dreams, and they are big, but I really, really hope that I can actually achieve them. And so that was the second moment of just nothing else can prepare me for this. This is exactly where I am, and I'm just going to have to do, talk about present. And the third one, remind myself, was, what happened on the last Arts on Tour thing, which was, even though I was having a month-long panic attack, it was incredible the amount of resonance and transformation and connection that was felt with me and an audience, because I'd been presented in the right way, because I was the person saying, this is my, these are my musical parents, Joni Mitchell and Leonard Cohen. These are my originals. And so I was basically just presenting how I wished to be seen and heard. So I felt like everyone got that, because they were there for the right reasons, as well as explaining that this is the promotion of my new album, which has Braille on the front cover. So there were blind people in attendance wherever we went to these tiny little towns for Arts on Tour. But then I had to convince the band to tell me, because I was doing this gig in Reefton, and there was a blind guy who I saw a show on Attitude Television about him. So, but he didn't know me, but he came along to the gig, and I didn't know he was there, because I didn't see that he was there. He was using a cane. He wasn't using a guide dog. Now, when I had two peeps from Deaf Blind Aotearoa in Nelson, they came up, they introduced themselves, they wanted to meet me, we wanted to talk, we were just like besties for life after that. They had their guide dogs in harnesses, and I could hear them, and they were in the front row, and they were very present. So I had to school the band to say, hey guys, I can't see if a blind person's there. Please tell me, because this is actually part of what we're trying to do, is raise consciousness and band together, because there's so much isolation. Blind can't see blind. We walk down the street, we don't see people. We have to trust that the people who know us will say, hey, Caitlin, it's whoever. Because, I've been in the city a long, long time. And yet most sighted people would be going, hey, whoever, and what's up? But I can't do that unless they approach me. Right. So it's very one-sided. And therefore, I can also go for a walk and feel incredibly lonely, because I'm not seeing anybody. And those are the things that the isolation of blindness is one of the drawbacks, I've got to say. But it wouldn't be if we can share that, because whenever you've got that lived, shared experience, it's beautiful.
It really is. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, did you want me to speak to the 3 projects that nourish me?
Yeah.
Okay. I wrote teaching, performing with amazing musicians, and the revelation that comes from writing.
Oof.
And I've said, how does my audience get nourished? I've said, if the music nourishes me, it'll nourish them too.
Yes.
Which is also my feeling. What lights me up? Dancing, laughter, spiritual connection, real talk. And what have I had to say goodbye to? Security, having a family, being heard or understood, and anything to do with having money, i.e. travel. We're done.
Thank you for going through those questions.
I kind of had to. It's kind of, I prefer to know in advance what to speak to, because then I can actually make it more guided. It's like answering any questions, it's so much better if you know. I mean, I can do the ad hoc stuff, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's a wrap.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't voice some gratitude. Gratitude first to you, dear Caitlin. And gratitude to the stories and harmonies waiting to be sung, yet to be written, and those we know in our hearts so well. Gratitude to the aching, heartfelt connection of music and the reverberations of connectedness. Gratitude to the blue-green earth and all its inhabitants, and to the skies beyond that influence and pull. I'm grateful for love, pleasure, compassion, trust, hope, resilience, bravery, and boldness. And I'm grateful for strong women who inspire me and steady men that ground me, and to the wondrous beings that defy the binary and teach me to question old habits and assumptions. I'm grateful for life as well as death, for the ancestors that dwell within these bones and whisper on the wind. I'm grateful for the alchemical process of change. And lastly, I'm grateful for those of you who are listening to this podcast, and to Bjorn for producing it. Mate wa, till next time, I love you.